Hey everybody, welcome back to Therapists Unmasked. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Sam. Join us as we talk to Dr. Gilly Kahn about research, masking emotions, ADHD, and paranormal activity.
We hope you enjoy the episode and let's roll the intro. Welcome, my dear. We're really excited to have you onto the podcast. Now, introduce yourself, tell us your name, where you're from, what you do for work, and what your views are on mental health.
I'm really excited to be here. This is like such a Zen podcast. From what I understand, there's like no prep. You just come on and be a person.
Yep.
And that's like the point, which is really nice. It's very,
Absolutely.
I think, de-stressing and liberating because therapists are people too.
For sure.
So my name is Dr. Gilly Kahn, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I work in the Atlanta area in a small group practice. I am originally from Florida, so like the Miami area. And then my view on mental health, it's funny because I've listened to a couple of your episodes. Every time I hear that question, I feel nervous because I'm like, wow, that's very broad.
Absolutely. And this is why it's so cool to ask everybody this because they have a different answer every single time. And that directs the rest of the episode. So that's why it's so cool to ask this question to everybody.
Yeah. Mental health is part of life, it's like asking, what's your view on your health in general? Like
Yeah.
mental health is physical health. And I was recently having a conversation with someone actually, and we were trying to kind of pinpoint like different specific chemicals that are involved with a specific condition. And she said to me, it's pointless because everything is connected in your body. Everything is related. And I know I'm trailing off. It's part of what I do, but like I was just doing some research for the book I'm writing on ADHD in women. Originally, I had a chapter in there on like, it's called like, your brain on ADHD. So like the ADHD brain. And I decided, I'll see what the publisher thinks, but, I kind of took a step back and I was like, no, it's not just your brain, like it's your whole body, you know? So it's kind of a large undertaking, but it's hard to just kind of focus on, just the brain. There's like research now on the gut brain connection, and, there's hormones and um, just so many other factors that involve the entire body in any condition that it's hard to just kind of, limit it to a discussion of just one thing.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so you said that you're from Florida. So
Mhm.
what motivated you to want to become a therapist in the first place?
There were personal reasons, but then there were, just like interest, and professional reasons too. But the personal reasons are more like family related. I lost my mom when I was 4. She passed away from breast cancer. And I grew up in a situation that just, it wasn't easy. Like in your families, I'm first generation American. And my family's from Israel. And then, we extend back to, Russia and Egypt. And it's just like a nice mix.
Hmm.
But, that experience of growing up in a family where, the culture is just not the same as American culture, that's tough. So I think growing up, I just had this like just need to want to help people. And, it's just like, it sounds so cliche. Like, I wanted to help people, but like, it's hard to explain. It's just like this physical, like this need to take whatever experience you had when you were younger and turn it into something that's meaningful, where you can actually, you know, help like make a difference
Hmm.
in society. So that was like number one. And then number two, in terms of like my like interest path, I originally was very interested in writing. And so as early as like, I don't know, when I was 14, I wanted to be a writer. And I actually have, it's like this orange envelope that says my stories. I'm not even kidding. With
I
like a
love
little
that.
wiggly underneath. And like my husband makes fun of me for it. He's just like, oh, my friends used to make fun of me too. They'd be like, ooh, my stories, you know? Like I think just from the perspective of a woman who's neurodivergent, like diagnosed with ADHD in adulthood. And I also have a history of depression. I think, you know, we all know that women are more likely to mask or like hide their symptoms than men, especially when you're first generation American, you know, because it's like, you know, in your culture, it's just, it's not understood. And even for Americans, you know, I mean, I think we've come a long way with destigmatizing mental health conditions, but I think writing was a way for me to hide, you know, like especially fiction. So now I'm coming out of that, and you know, I'm writing nonfiction. So I remember I would share my writing with people, and they'd be like, "Oh wow, that's so sad," and I would say, "Yeah, but it's not about me." But of course it is. You know, when you're writing, like it's all you, but you're channeling it through different characters. And so I think that's important, but also I think getting in touch with how do you connect with the story that you wrote. In the beginning, for me, it was fiction all the time. And then when I got to college, right before college, I decided I was going to major in psychology because I loved writing, but I just didn't see it as a very stable career choice. And what I loved to write about, what I loved to read about was, you know, like all psychological content. So, you know, and I love talking to people, and, you know, I was the one who was really good at keeping secrets. And so that's what I started with. But then once I started at the University of Miami, with psychology as a major, I realized that, you know, you can't like pigeonhole yourself. Like if you put all your eggs in, you know, one basket, then anytime you feel like you failed, you're not going to have anything to lean on. And so I think it's important to juggle different areas of passion. So I decided I would add creative writing. And initially I was looking into it as a minor, but they didn't offer it as a minor. So I just said, you know what, screw it. And I added the second major. It's like, you know, ADHDers just do that to themselves. They're just like, here's more work, you know, I'll be fine. I'll survive. I'll figure it out, you know?
I'm actually curious. So when you were writing your stories, right, and you would say like, no, this isn't about me. I don't know what you're talking about. What was it that made you not want to be like, this is my story?
Yeah, I didn't want to worry anyone. So yeah, and it's been that for many years now, you know, and I think maybe you mentioned this too, but sorry, sounds so stalkerish. I literally was just listening.
No.
But yeah, like my parents, they say like we learn more about you through, you know, your articles now and your podcast than, you know, we've ever known. I knew this would happen too, and it has happened to a certain extent where, you know, your parents blame themselves and they say like, where did I go wrong? And it's like, how do you tell them like, yes, there were things that you did, but you know, they weren't your fault. No one is perfect. And also it's not just you, you know, like it's biology, like we were talking about before. And a lot of that biology, I just don't really know because I feel like the source of it, my mom, you know, she passed away. So I don't even have her to ask about it.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about that for a second, of just the fact that like your family has said like we learn about you through your articles and your podcast and all that. What feelings come up for you when they tell you these things? Because I remember I had a conversation with my dad the other day, not the other day, a little while ago. We were talking about when it comes to me and dating, right? Because I'm physically disabled, super hard to find somebody because of my physical disability. And he was just like, I had no idea things were that hard for you. And I had no idea that you felt that way when it comes to dating. He's like, that made me really sad that you felt that way. And I was just like, whoa, like the fact that he didn't know any of these things and the fact that he's like learning more about me through this podcast, we're able to openly have these conversations now. It's really nice. So like what feelings came up for you when you had that situation come up?
I feel scared, like nervous, it's like, talking about the gut brain connection, but like I feel it in my stomach, like that's acidity. Because I don't know, it's nerve-wracking to not talk about something and then talk about it with someone who is very close to you, who you care a lot about, and who you want to protect them, So we actually had a very deep conversation when he visited me maybe like a month ago. He said the same thing. It hurt me, listening to some of the stuff that I said. Not that I hurt him, but it hurt him because he thought maybe I could have done things differently. He was blaming himself. It was weird to be in the position where, I'm the kid and I'm trying to reassure my parent that, it wasn't his fault. It'd be hard for anyone. So I get it. I think a lot of, the work that I do too with clients is just making peace with their past. It's not he's to blame, she's to blame. It just is, and just understanding it. And then where do we go from here?
What was your family's views like on the idea of you becoming a therapist?
I think early on, I guess it was just like instilled that like therapy was like baloney, just like nonsense. And we just didn't really talk about it. But then when I started to express an interest in it, I started college, there wasn't an issue, really. I think it took time.
What was your experience like in terms of grief? Because ours is obviously completely different.
In terms of, like my life and, growing up and grief, I think it's been more like just not knowing and finding like a way to kind of find like what's the light at the end of the tunnel. So, as someone with ADHD, I go through these rabbit holes of doing a lot of research on very random, but very interesting topics, I think, although sometimes other people don't think so. They like yawn while I'm talking about them. And I'm just like, how are you not interested in this? But like, I was really, really interested in near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences and in the different, levels of consciousness and is there an afterlife? And I just started reading a ton of books and articles and writing research articles about this it was a few years. And I think that really helped me. And I actually use a lot of that information now with people who have health anxiety or like worries about, death. Because there is science showing that, like pointing in the direction of an afterlife. It's not that you just die and that's it. There are too many, it's greater than chance. The number of people who have near-death experiences and report seeing a loved one.
Yeah, actually, now that you say that, I remember there was a lot of stories on Reddit that my friend got me really into once, and it was about kids and how they're very prone to seeing ghosts. There were some stories about kids who remember themselves in an afterlife, and they will be telling these stories to their parents, and the parents will be like, "My child is talking as if they're in the Civil War." Like they remember details, like vivid details. And it's kind of funny because it kind of resonates with an experience I went through as a kid. I don't remember any of this, just to like start off, but my dad was telling me this because he wanted to like get us scared during Hurricane Sandy when we were like pitch black, no light, anything. So he was like, yeah, Samantha had an imaginary friend when she was like 3, and he would go everywhere with her, and it started off like all calm and tame. Like she would save a seat for him at the table and be like, no, don't sit there. I think I called him Beto. Beto is sitting there, like, don't sit there, yada yada yada. And it got to a point like my parents were getting like really annoyed. They were just like, okay, like we get it, we get it. And so then all of a sudden, like really bad things started to happen that I started to get like bruises and stuff. And they're like, why is all this stuff like popping up on her. And so then this is gonna sound really, really bad, but they out of nowhere one day, like we were in the car and I was like moving my head like this and I was wearing pigtails. I was like, Daddy, Daddy, like he's pulling my hair, he's pulling my hair. And my dad made a whole spectacle on the highway. He pulled over, he pretended to like put his arm out, grab him and toss him out of the car and like drive off. And he said that he saw in his rear view that I was like saying bye to him because we left him in the highway. And then fast forward to like a few days later, I ran into my parents' room and I was like, Mommy, Daddy, like he's back, but this time he's not a little kid, he's a grown man with a knife.
Oh my
And
God. I'm waiting for you to be like, and then you can watch this on Netflix on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Like, is this your real life?
yeah, no, this actually
Wow.
happened. And my dad like freaked out because he thought somebody like came into my room. And so he went in and it was like pitch black. There was nobody in here. The next day they called a priest to come and do like a blessing of the house. And the priest told my mom, put a glass of holy water under everybody's bed. And if you see the water turn black, then change it out until it's no longer turning black. She said the next day she checked under everybody's bed until she got to mine. Everybody's was clear except for mine. Mine was jet black. And she had to actually
Oh
change it
my
out
God.
for
What?
a week straight. And then we had the priest actually marry them come and do like a whole like blessing of the house and everything. And at first I was like, Dad, you're pulling my arm. Like that did not happen to me. And he was just like, no, you don't remember this? I'm like, no, this actually happened. He was like, yes, I'm not kidding you. Like, this is not a joke. I was like, okay. And since then, I started to do, like you, I started to do more research into all of that and looking into it. And I just find it so fascinating, like the minds of children and how this all comes about.
Wait, this story is really good. So wait, how old were you when this happened?
I was 3. Um, but yeah. So all that happened, and I was just like, till this day, like my mom is actually really scared of me even saying that name because she was like, please no, like I don't want that to come back again. Like it genuinely was traumatizing. Ashley is making this face because I've never told her this ever before.
No.
And so this connection is just, it's great. I love it.
I
That's
do
so
that. I
cool.
pull these things out of people.
Well, thanks
Yeah.
for coming. Thanks for coming to Sam's TED Talk about paranormal activities. It's great. Back to you.
No, but yes, I 100% understand where you're coming from. And, I believe you. And, I remember thinking back to when I was reading about this stuff, but I remember reading that I think maybe it was like an Eastern tradition. It's like the thought is like kids are kind of like the purest or the most like kind of blankest slate, in terms of consciousness or being aware. And then, as we get older, it kind of gets muddied.
Remember the movie The Polar Express?
Yes.
So the whole basis of the movie was that, if you can hear the bells of Santa's sleigh, you still believe. And at the end of the movie, the kid and his sister were able to hear the bells because they believed, but the parents couldn't
Right.
because they no longer believed. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of in that sense that, when you grow up, you start to learn certain things, you start to believe certain things are true or not true. And like you said, your consciousness, your memory, your fantasy, everything starts to get like mixed and muddy.
Or you like lose focus
Mm-hmm.
of that purity. You
Mm-hmm.
focus on the wrong things
Mm-hmm.
like success and power and career and materialism. And the more you fill your life with those things, like the more you lose touch with what
Exactly.
it actually is, to be alive. When I was really deep in like reading about this stuff and thinking about it all the time, and I was on my honeymoon in Greece with my husband, and there was a situation where this woman was she clearly, like, she looked like, she was homeless, and she's walking around with like muddy hair and dirty clothes, and people were just kind of keeping their distance from her. And I remember looking at her and just thinking, for the first time in my life, like, I understand what you're going through. She was like talking to herself, walking in circles. And the reason for that is because while I was so interested in this topic, I was having like nighttime hallucinations where I would wake up in the middle of the night and literally see things in the room. And it was the scariest thing ever because I couldn't hear anything. Apparently, this is the most common type. And this is a very kind of normative experience for a lot of people, but it doesn't happen to everyone. But it's more common for people with ADHD, like the more I read about it. But what's interesting is that it was only limited to when I was in Greece. When I left Greece, they were gone. I've never had another one. It was just so strange. But it's really, I can say, I've, hallucinated before. It's a really, really, really scary experience because it's like you shake I don't know, shake my head, blink my eyes, it's still there. So yeah, I think that's important as a therapist too, I feel like you don't really understand something until you experience it. And you can say that you do. Like, I remember before I had kids and therapists who don't have kids, and, we would be taught, like, how should you respond to parents when they ask you, like, do you have kids? You have to ask, like, why do you ask? But the truth is, just say, no, I don't have kids. No, I don't know what you're going through. Please tell me.
Something similar just happened to me, literally,
Yeah?
like on Friday. No, I'm sorry, on Thursday. I had a new intake come in and she was like, "Do you have children?" And I'm just like, "No, I do not, but how about you tell me about your experience and what you're going through?" And I think she got a little too comfortable with me. Also, the fact that like we're both talking about being Mexican and stuff, and she at the end of it, she was like asking me to do something for her, and so I'm just like, "You're getting comfortable with me.
Yeah,
You're
that's how
getting
it
like
is.
really
Yeah,
comfortable with me." And this was
right.
the first session, like first intake, everything, and I was just like, "Okay."
But also, I think you touched on something else that was very interesting that I could definitely relate to. Like, I feel like when you are, different culturally, and you get a client from the same culture, then that always happens where there's definitely that the relationship is different, and they start like speaking to you, in that language, and start treating you like a friend, which
Yeah,
is
100%.
nice. It's nice because it's like a lot of the clients that I see who are Israeli, like, they haven't been to an Israeli therapist before, or even, any medical provider, and they often feel misunderstood. So, it's nice for them to be able to explain some things, throw in some Hebrew phrases here and there, and then I understand them, or I understand like the culture. It's different. So like, it's nice in that respect, and I like it, but then also it's much more complicated.
I'm just like, okay, she's getting comfortable. She's calling me corazón. She's giving me like these pet names. And I know in like the Hispanic culture, it's very common.
Warm and
yeah, it's very like warm and inviting, but this is also like a professional setting. So it's like, okay, I need to like kind of, because I've had Hispanic clients before.
Yes.
But this is the first time a client is like becoming this comfortable with me so quickly.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for it, but at the same time, kind of like I need to like, I don't know if I need to like set boundaries like right now and be like, don't do that, or if I can be like, okay, like
no, don't. I would say no, do not set boundaries, because I think you have something that's special that other providers in this patient's history have not had. So like, I really have felt, and this is what I think helps me a lot in my relationship with my clients, like, therapists need to chill the F out. Like they're just like way too wound up. A lot of times therapy is a human relationship, and I don't like the blank slate model, like, especially and it depends who you're dealing with also, if you're dealing with someone from a culture that's very warm and family oriented and collectivistic, like it's not going to work in therapy if you don't behave like that, because that's where they feel comfortable, and you should feel comfortable in therapy.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad that I'm hearing that perspective because, like you said, we're taught to be very professional, very like, don't say this, don't do that, act a certain way, like basically make sure your clients don't know that you have a personality. And it's very
That's going to be hard.
It's
For
very
me,
hard.
that would be really hard.
I mean, it's very hard to kind of like, for 2 years, we were like trained that to be specifically that. And then we get thrown in and it's like, okay, what we're taught and what we actually do are two different things. Now we have to untrain ourselves and act a certain way with certain clients. Like my personality does stand out because I'm not going to be the same as my supervisor. I'm not going to be the same therapist as my coworker.
Right.
Like I'm going to do different approaches. I'm going to be doing different things. I'm going to be speaking in a different language. Like it's very different. And I think that's something that people need to be aware of, that it's okay to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I also think, that different psychologists have different perspectives on this, but I've heard, at least like the feedback I've gotten, like clients feel like they can connect more when they see that their therapist is a human. And I remember personally, like I've been to like individual therapy one time. It was after I had my daughter. And actually it's interesting because I went in and she asked me like, oh, well, why are you coming in? And I was like, migraines. And I said depression tied to migraine. And like now looking back, like 100%. I mean, it wasn't just migraine, but like, oh my God, it made my life hell. But one thing I remember is I remember when she would say to me like, oh yeah, that happened to me too. Or it's similar for me, in my relationship with, my husband or whatever. And that felt good. I was a student at the time. And so I would look at her and think, well, she's made it, and she experiences similar things to me, so I can make it.
That's so good.
I think it's good to be vulnerable and normalize things with your clients. There's actually one client I had who got her ADHD diagnosis as a teen. And there was a moment where she just started sobbing on my couch. And she was just like, I just feel so stupid. And I looked at her and I said, do you think I'm stupid? And she said, no. And I said, you see the diploma on the wall over there? I have a doctorate and I have ADHD too. So no, you're not stupid. You can do anything you put your mind to. If anything, you can do more than that.
What populations do you like to work with?
So most of so how about, I don't know, how do I choose? Okay, my favorite clients are teens who are neurodivergent. Like I love working with like autistic teens, teens with ADHD. And then the niche that I've, fallen into because I've had an interest in this since I was very young and it makes sense is anxiety and depression. So a lot of times the people I work with are typically girls who have not been diagnosed and they come in with anxiety and depression because they haven't been, it hasn't been detected yet. And so it's very confusing to them. Getting a diagnosis is therapy in itself because suddenly it's like a weight is lifted. Like there's nothing wrong with me, right? My brain is just wired differently. I love working with adults with ADHD too. It's just a lot of fun because then I could work with them and talk to them about their kids who also have ADHD. We work on the parenting aspect, but then also work on their lives, like jobs and medication management. And then all of the very interesting comorbidities like tic disorders and obsessive compulsive disorder. And It's like once you kind of understand all of these conditions in depth, it's more about the symptoms than about the labels. You're kind of like weaving all of the different symptoms and seeing how they make sense in this person's profile and what kind of underlies them, right? So for most of the people I see, it's usually sensory because in neurodiversity, there's just like this really big sensory component that's not even really mentioned, I don't think mentioned, but definitely not included in the criteria for ADHD. I feel like more research into looking at comorbidities, into other symptoms that often co-occur with ADHD, but are not really associated with it. I think that's going to give us a lot more information about ADHD, especially in adults.
What kind of advice would you tell somebody like me who isn't really experienced with working with just people on the spectrum in general?
Good. I'll make my magic. Bippity boppity boop. That's it. No, it's a lot. It's a lot. You just have to have like a lot of experience in the area. But I would say like overall, they're my favorite population to work with because there is no BS. What they're feeling, what they're thinking about. Yes, it's hard to get to that. But then maybe that's where you need to start. Like, for example, I've worked with autistic teens who they just struggle with even feeling because it's like, think about like a dial, either it's like pushed up to the max when they feel something, which is typically what I see, or it's like kind of dulled out. The reason maybe that a lot of times they're avoiding feeling something is because it's so uncomfortable. It's kind of like, for me, when I watch a show and I really identify with the main character, oh my God, I could be like sobbing. While I'm watching, it really, like, my empathy is just like turned up to like 1,000,000. Like I can't disconnect. And I think, it's similar for them. And so feeling something, anything, especially when it's very intense and it involves grief, is really, 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 really challenging. So the first step might be just to get used to feeling things, So what I've started with them, just, watching shows, watching the Lion King scene where, Mufasa falls.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And we just like feel emotions and talk about what did you feel? Or I remember we would like act out the scenes. So where Mufasa fell, we were like matching tone of voice. It's also like a social skills component to it, and like actually talking it out, and then you might feel it even more, or maybe you feel it less because you're rehearsing it. Then, moving into me telling a sad story about me and them telling a sad story about them, and just taking like little steps and using like acceptance and commitment therapy skills to just notice what their internal experiences are. What are you feeling in your body? What thoughts are you having? And if that's hard, I'll give them like a sheet of paper and I'll say, write it down. And take your time.
Yeah, because I've had teens who are just like, I don't know what I'm feeling right now. I don't even know how to describe it. I don't know. They give me a lot of I don't know answers.
Right. Where is it? Where is it in your body? How about that? Start small. Be very concrete and specific. Where is it? It's here. It's in my stomach. Okay. If you were to describe it like an object to me, what would it be? Is it sharp? Is it dull? Is it round? Like, concretize it.
Interesting. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that because like I said, I do get a lot of kids who say or teens who say like, I don't know. I just don't know. And it's just like, shit, me neither. Then
draw a person, give it to them and say, point. Where do you feel it in your body? Wrapping paper, it's just like a really big roll of paper. So I've seen someone like roll out the wrapping paper and then use the other side, like the blank side. And then the kid literally lays down on the wrapping paper and she traces,
I've done that.
Yes. And then she says, okay, color where you're feeling something. And that's a very concrete way, right? Because it's not a stick figure. This was you.
Yeah, I've done that before. And it's very empowering to the kid, and they're like, oh my goodness, like, okay. And I say, what color would you feel in your hands? What color would you feel in your feet?
Yes.
What color would you feel in your stomach? Like, they love drawing, they love coloring, they love all of that. So to make it very personal and like very them, it's the best thing that they can do.
Yeah, but also what's interesting about autism is there's this big like synesthesia component. Like I've had one autistic kid once tell me, like, I associate people with drinks. And I was like, what drink am I? And she was like, you're a Starbucks, what did she say? Frappe or like Frappuccino or whatever, because you're sweet. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. But she really did that. She associates people, this is this drink, this is this drink. And that's what makes sense to her, you know, and how she can kind of, you know, make sense of the world. And so, you know, just connecting the different, you know, things from the different senses. So like anger is red or pain is red, you know, it like, I can't describe it. It makes sense. So there are just a lot of components, you know, you just like when you have a really in-depth understanding of autism and neurodiversity, then you can think of activities, you know, that you're already taught to do as a therapist and think, how does this connect to their strengths or the way that they understand the world? Like another thing I do is I'll do like stoplights. So whenever I try to teach like flexible thinking, or just, you know, it's like CBT, but I try to make it very, very concrete, is I'll put a yellow light, a red light, and a green light. And I say, okay, what's the bad thought? You know, the bad thought is, I'm stupid. Okay. So then I write, I'm stupid. Where does that go? On the red light, the yellow light, or the green light? Red is bad. I'm stupid. Okay. Now, how can we turn that thought around, make it exactly the opposite? You know, I'm smart. Okay, where does that go? The green light. And now how do we think about something in the middle? Right? So it's not I'm stupid. It's not I'm smart. What's in the middle? Right? And then that mind blown.
I used to also work with kids that were autistic. While I was in school, I actually did help an occupational therapist with horse therapy. And she had children that were autistic. And she would do something similar in the sense that like, it was red light, green light, yellow light with the horse. And the kids would be on the horse.
Oh, that's so fun.
The kids would be on the horse, and obviously like we would be holding onto the strings, like we'll be walking next to them with the horse, and when the light would turn, the kids would be like, okay, is it red, green, or yellow? If it's red, they wouldn't move. If it was green, they knew a specific motion to do for the horse for them to go. And then if it was yellow, they knew another specific motion for the horse to know to like slow down. And that helped them a lot, actually. A story that I like to say is that one time I was on the horse and I was having a really bad day. And the horse sensed that I was having a bad day and he wouldn't move. And I was getting so annoyed at the horse. I was like, why aren't you moving? Like, what's going on? Why is this happening to me? And so the trainer came over, we were talking, and I was bawling my eyes out. It was the worst time to just be crying. I just, everything I felt that day was that my whole life was just crumbling. And it was just too many things piled on at once. And so I was crying, talking to the trainer and everything. And then once I stopped crying, I was just like, okay, took a deep breath, did everything. And then the horse starts to move. And so I like to say that in the sense that horses, they know when somebody is not ready to be writing, when they're not in that mindset. What I saw, at least like with the kid doing the horse therapy, is that the horses in general, compared to the other clients, the horses with the kids that were autistic, they were so different. Their personalities just switched, and the most hyper horse was now the calmest horse for these children, and they let the kids come and like actually touch them. And I think that's the good thing about them. It's like they're so intuitive that they know when to act a specific way with specific people.
Yeah, good. Now I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to drive to the middle of nowhere in Georgia and go to a ranch and adopt a horse.
Do it.
Love that. Love it.
Do it,
So
do it, do
good.
it.
Yeah.
There's so many like horse retreats that I've heard about, and I've heard so many like good things. So many people rave about it and say like it's an truly an eye-opening experience being able to like be amongst them, like being able to take care of them, groom them, and actually ride them in the end because you're forming a connection, and it can be something that's I've heard is
Yes.
completely like an eye-opening experience.
Sam's been very vocal about how the fact that horseback riding is one of her self-care activities.
Yes.
What is yours?
For me, self-care, oh wow, this is sad. No, it's writing. I just like the truth is that it's like I ended up in a career that like I love it. It's what I did for fun, since I was really young. So seriously, sitting and listening to an audiobook and just taking notes or and I know this sounds so boring, but to me it really is. Like I just love it. The truth is I can't just sit down and do nothing. Like I feel horrible doing that. I'd rather sit and learn about something or just write. The problem is that when you're writing nonfiction, like you have to have a plan. With fiction, it's a little bit more free form, but it needs to make sense and there's sort of like more of a science that goes into it, but it's okay because I also enjoy just sitting back and learning and taking notes before I could put everything on the page.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
The other thing I love is just connecting with others. So there are times where, writing is lonely. So I just feel lonely. And then I end up like texting a friend or calling a friend or, talking about, as you get older, a lot of your friends live out of state. So scheduling a time to go visit a friend, just, like I think your relationship with your spouse and your kids is important, but there's nothing like female friendships and just having that bond. So if I'm not writing, I'm usually connecting or like trying to connect with someone. But by the, same token, like with neurodiversity, it's like you can only take so much of that. Like, I just like, just some interaction and then a nice balance with just being alone.
How did you do it having a family and making the career that you have now?
So ADHDers are stubborn mofos, and that's how I'll start. But it's the first piece. I think whoever said that to you, they're pretty much on target. It's just you have to you have to be passionate, but also you have to remind yourself like why you're doing what you're doing because it's so easy to just quit. Like PhD programs are really long and really vigorous, and there are a lot of people who do like the ABD, all but dissertation, because by the time they reach the end, they're just so tired, which is really unfortunate. But like for me, I had my daughter. I'm trying to think. I think it was my third year. Yeah, it was my third year. One thing I learned is that you plan and God laughs. Like initially I wanted to go straight from college into a clinical PhD program. And I, didn't sit down and do a whole lot of research in terms of like, or really process the degree of how competitive it really was. So I applied to 5 programs and I didn't get in the first round. And after having a talk with my mother-in-law, she told me, there's a lot of different paths to get to where you want to be. So I decided I would get a master's in experimental psychology and beef up my credentials and then reapply. And so I did that for 2 years. And then I was accepted into Nova. It was a positive experience. I am proud of the fact that I went there. I love my mentor. And I loved really most of my professors, like 99.99999%. It was a lot of work, but also because I started late because I got a master's first, that didn't align with my plan because I wanted to have kids before 30. So I remember like my husband, we were just sitting and watching TV one day, and I just turned to him. I was in graduate school, and I turned to him and I said, let's just start. It was like that. Let's just start. And he goes, okay. I was like, there's never going to be a good time, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to wait. I'm just going to do it now. And yeah, so we just did it. I think like in life, like there's never a good time. There's a will, there's a way. You make it happen.
I did want to make like a timeline as to when I wanted to go back to school, and it was before, like either before I'm 30 or when I'm 30. And if I don't go back to school, then my plan B is to start doing like adult things like buying a house, for instance. I always feel like, I'm late in the game because I'm applying like 4 years later after I got my bachelor's, 2 years after I got my master's. So, like, can I actually do it? Is this something that I can continue? I'm always hit with that doubt of, am I good enough? Am I gonna get in?
Yeah.
Like, am
No,
I
you
doing
gotta
the
just
right
do
thing?
it. Come on,
Yeah.
like what we do with our therapy clients. I'll just be like, all right, open up the website.
Yeah, just do it. Like just fill it out right now. Like
Yeah,
we're good.
exactly. That's what you got to do, right? You got to get the ball rolling. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. You're going to wonder about it. May as well, get the ball rolling. And then if in the midst of it, you're like, oh, what the hell am I doing? I don't want to do this anymore, then stop. But, if you never start, you're going to continue questioning it.
Sam, it sounds like your biggest hesitation right now is just whether you have enough experience or not. And that frustrates me so much, Samantha, because you have so much more experience than you think you do. And when you ask all these people these things, it's like, Sam, stop. You are good. You have research under your belt, and I hate research so much, but you have that under your belt and you have so much work experience. It's like, what is the hesitation? Just go for it.
The hesitation is the rejection, and then not knowing what to do afterwards, and then kind of falling in that downward spiral of crap, what do I do next? And like then starts the questions, and that's a whole part of just my anxiety, just like questioning myself and just doing everything backwards. And I'm the type of person that I like to have plans A, B, C, D, and then when those plans exhaust themselves, I'm like, crap, what do I do now? Like, am I actually meant for this? Like, is this my career? Is it like part of my life? Like, I start to question so many things, and it does bring me down into a spiral that I do not want to go into.
You know the Nike slogan?
Which one? Just do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Where's your mental health at today? And if it's not in the best place, like what are you doing to address that?
That's where it is. I'll be honest, like I was working at my prior job a few months ago. Actually, I moved recently, and I was working 6-day work weeks, just doing the same thing and seeing clients on Sundays because I work with kids, and a lot of them just weren't able to work with my schedule because I have kids too. So I would go in Sundays, and then my goal initially was to go like 9 to 1 p.m. It did not last. It was like 9 to 5, like, or, yes. And I was like, cleaning the practice after, and because it was like the end of the week, so I just got really burnt out. And I mean, it's a long, complicated story, but basically I just started crying, like in my colleague's office. And she was like, Gilly, stop working Sundays. And I was like, how can I stop working Sundays? Like, like so many people need that. And, she was just like, stop, just stop. And I was like, stop. Like, I was just like thinking about it, and it hadn't even like occurred to me. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to stop. But for me, I can't just stop. Like, I can't just stop and do nothing. Like, I would just be unhappy. So I was like, I'm going to start writing the book. Like, it's like a goal I've had So I was very young. I was just like, that's what I'm going to do. It's just like, I'm going to dedicate Sundays to my book. And that has been like my saving grace. Like, I love it. Like, I really do love it. And I think people aren't going to understand that. But this is my self-care. Like, yeah.
I can't wait to read your book. Like that's
sign me up on the
awesome.
wait list.
Seriously.
Oh my God, don't put pressure on me.
No. Oh my dear. I think we've covered a lot today. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me on the show. Thanks for inviting me. This was definitely a lot of fun, and it was nice to meet you guys.
It was
It
great
was a
to meet you
pleasure meeting
too.
you too. I really like you're so inspiring. Your story is inspiring. And again, I really appreciate you being able to be as open as you were about your story too. So again, thank you so much.
Yes.
Of course. Yeah, so are you guys. You're awesome.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to end it here. So please like, subscribe, share this with your friends and family. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Therapists_Unmasked. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.